So thank you for joining the workshop. This will give you the business value of Ansible and how you can improve the cross-team collaboration and overall productivity and clear the way for innovation, which will obviously foster agile development, cloud growth, and beyond. So I welcome Jonathan Shaw from TD SYNNEX. He brings a wealth of real-world industry knowledge. He's specialized in software in the enterprise. Jonathan has designed and implemented solutions at several Fortune 500 companies and the SMB market. I would like to welcome Chris Reed from TD SYNNEX. He's an industry expert in Linux and has 10 years of working experience in open source software within small to enterprise environments. So I will give the stage to Jonathan and Chris to kick off today's presentation. This workshop is recorded, and if you have questions at any point of time, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself. This is an engaging workshop. If you have any questions or have any feedback, you can reach me out. I have sent emails, and you'll find my email ID there. In between, if you want to chat, you can put your questions in the chat room. And this recorded session will be available after the workshop.
Deal. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Malika. So, hey, y'all. My name is Jonathan Shaw. I am a solution sales professional. It's a hybrid role for TD SYNNEX. For those of you who were familiar with Tech Data and/or SYNNEX, you know that the two concerns have merged, and we are now the largest distributor in the world with a very significant Red Hat practice. I work exclusively in the Red Hat realm now, and as Malika said, I'm a former IBMer and spent my entire IBM career in the software group as a systems engineer, and I believe in my tenure managed to work in every color of the IBM rainbow, as it used to be. Each software had its own color back then, so it's been a while. Looking forward to today. We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there, and Chris and I are going to make this as much fun as we possibly can. Chris?
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Reed. I'm the other half of the engineering team here at TD SYNNEX. And thank you very much, Malika, for the intro. That was fantastic. I guess I don't need to tell you much about me, so I'll move straight into some of the housing today and keeping things and expectations aligned. I'll start with, I have a dog. She likes to communicate during these workshops. Sometimes my wife does as well. So don't be afraid if you hear her. It's definitely my dog. I know Jonathan has one. Don't be afraid if you have some background noise. It's all okay here. We're all working from home. It's the status quo. I'll also move forward and say that this is a lot of information. All right. We don't want you to rush through it. It's hard to take it all in. Move at your own pace. Feel free to use these workshops after. You know, we're done with the workshop today. You're more than welcome to ask any questions to Malika or Ford, and she can get in contact with us. Let's say you're not able to finish this workshop today. Not a problem. We can definitely do another one for you later on down the road. Absolutely are more than open to that. If you want to get the most out of today's time, I would tell you to pay attention to the slides that Jonathan does and ask questions regarding whatever it is that you're trying to either implement or focus on. It can be very helpful and allow you to take more from today's workshop. If it's just us talking for 4 hours, you'll get quite tired. But without that, I'll hand it over to Jonathan to get rolling and touch anything that I missed.
All right, all sounds good. I'm going to dive right into it. So give me a moment here to go ahead and share out my my screen. And for some particular reason, Chris, my sharing capabilities went away.
Yeah, I have to do that.
There you go. Yeah, they're giving me the presenter. I caught that. Thank you.
Yep.
So hopefully at this point, everyone can see the Screen Network Automation Workshop. So I think without going around the room at this point, if you have any previous experience with Ansible, you're going to notice and see a lot of changes. There's some great changes, all for the positive. They've done a great amount of upgrading and redesigning of the interface. So let's just go ahead and dive right into things. So we run straight until 3 p.m. Eastern. That's 4 hours. You feel, as far as breaks go, you are free to take a break at any time you like. Just, don't need to let us know, but you can if you want. Best way to communicate, like I said, is through the chat. And one of us will always be looking at that while the other one is speaking or presenting. And hopefully the takeaways today are how you can see how the Ansible automation platform is going to help you if you're not using it with your network, with your networking tools and functionalities, how you're going to realize just how much easier and more efficient it can make things. So we're going to talk about an introduction to Ansible overall, how it works with the network, understanding modules and playbooks. You're going to be doing exercises as far as executing playbooks to make changes, config changes. We'll talk about things like gathering information, which are Ansible facts. We'll also talk about variables, looking at the resource modules that are available, using the automation controller, previously known as Tower, to operationalize automation for your enterprise. A lot of words. That's a lot of words just to say that basically that is the GUI single view of your environment on the glass, where you can do a lot of fine tuning, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And then major automation controller features, some of those that will be included in that, like role-based access control and workflows. Workflows, in my opinion, if you will, being the greatest value, because again, if you're new to Ansible and you're constructing playbooks to execute things, great. What good are 50 playbooks if you can't string them together into a workflow, basically what I always like to call the easy button, to allow them to go ahead and execute instead of having to fire them up individually? It kind of defeats the purpose without a workflow. Alrighty then. So what is the platform? What can it do? Why network automation, and how it works? And again, I apologize. Like I said, we've got a lot of content here. If I'm going too fast, let me know. I promise to do my best to slow myself down. Not always an easy task. And if I'm not going fast enough, by all means, let me know, because I can sure as heck speed things up. So automation happens when one of us that's on this call today meets a problem that they never want to have to solve again. And what happens, as you may know, and you may be part of this, all companies, all organizations, all enterprises, all SMBs, whatever your size, have the same challenge. In this case, it's many unintegrated and domain-specific tools. Network operations, SecOps, DevOps, and ITOps, everybody's doing his or her own thing, and they're probably automating it some way, shape, or form. So, when you talk about automation, there's really two words that go together. There's automating something, which is anyone in each of these individual groups, shortening their time, solving the problems that they don't want to meet again. But does the network ops people take into account what the SecOps, what the DevOps, what the other people need? So when you string that together, when you have a tool that takes away that domain specificity and allows it to be used across the enterprise, now you're talking about orchestration. My favorite and simpler analogy to that is if you go to watch the symphony, you always enjoy the talents of the soloist, but when the orchestra chimes in together, that's really when the music comes alive as far as that goes. It is no different, in my opinion, in what we're doing today. If what I do benefits others and makes the enterprise more streamlined and efficient, that is a good thing. Why Ansible over all the other automation platforms that are out there? Three very basic and simple reasons. Number one, it's powerful. Okay, it allows you to orchestrate complex processes at scale. It's very easy, to, as far as that goes. It literally fits into any nook and cranny, if you will. Number two, it's very simple. It simplifies automation across multiple domains by using a simple markup language called YAML. All right, YAML is extremely human readable, so even the least or the most experienced individual can look at the construct of a playbook, which we'll get into in depth shortly, or in a little while anyway, and say, oh, okay, I know exactly what this is going to do. Why? Because I can read it and it tells me what it's going to do. The intricacies of how it works, that's a little further down the road. And most importantly, it is agentless. It is truly agentless. If you're in a Windows environment, you can connect to it for WinRM. If you're in a complete Linux environment, you can use SSH protocol to go ahead and connect. So you do not have to install any software or on any of your endpoints or your nodes, as we call them in the automation world. As far as that goes, things get executed on specific nodes or specific endpoints, and then they go away. And they go away as long as they have that access. Chris, you want to add anything to that one? As far as agentless
Yes,
goes?
sir. So absolutely, some of the ones you're going to be working with today, all of them are going to be agentless, but they're all going to work a little bit different. And you have the flexibility here to whether you want to use like HTTP API, or I think one of the ones today is called netconf, which is SSH or XML over SSH. There's a lot of flexibility here with agentless and exactly what you can do. So for example, we can integrate with WinRM on Windows. Linux is SSH. A lot of the network CLI is API based, but let's say you don't want to use those. You want to go straight API using your own context or form. You're more than welcome to do that. We provide you that flexibility. That's really it. Back to you, Jonathan.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So very, very briefly, you can do all of this stuff on all of these things. Excuse me, and many more. Again, this is not new. Not new to people who have used Ansible previously. But if you're new to Ansible, I'll make probably the most challenging statement or assertion that I'll make all day is that there's really nothing you can't automate with Ansible. And that's been proven time and time again. And as we get into the architecture of the solution, we'll show you how that is based on what are the pieces and parts that make it up and how they interact and how you can even create your own if you don't find something that you need. Ansible did start out, Ansible itself and the Ansible automation platform did start out as a config management tool, but it has morphed, as you can see by this diagram, into so much more. This is what I was talking about before. It's breaking down those silos. Forgive me, I apologize for that. Breaking down those silos and bringing those lines of businesses together so everybody can interact, everyone can interact efficiently. Very, very basic example that I like to give has always been, think of a process in your organization that requires touching from four or five different groups. Let's just call it, the developers need a new VMware instance to go ahead and build something. So first you have to provision space for them on the net. They have to be attached to the network. You have to provision space on a server perhaps, or spin up a VMware somewhere. The right security patches have to be applied. So this usually is, hey, I've done my piece, now it's your turn. Think about being able to hit that easy button and just have someone from the development team request a new VMware instance and all the parameters, all the updates, all the security, all the patches, everything they need to do is executed in a relatively short period of time, in minutes instead of hours or possibly days. And no one has to stop what he or she is doing and touch anything. So there's where that operational efficiency comes in. What makes up the platform? It's fueled by, obviously, a huge open source community. That community is contains content creators, operators, domain experts, in this case, and users. Okay, and the beauty of Ansible, again, is it either works on-prem, within the, or with the cloud services, the different pieces and the domains, and it all start, and of course it has the Ansible command line. So essentially what happens is you have a large group, what Red Hat does, in case some of you were not aware, Red Hat sponsors hundreds of projects that they monitor. And when they see bits and pieces or things in those projects that they want to include in any one of the particular solutions that they provide, then they go ahead and bring that in-house and run it through its paces. So by the time you are using certified content, is what we call it, that is enterprise ready, and most importantly, it's supported. Red Hat does have world-class support available in either standard support, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, with certain SLAs, and then premium support, 24/7, 365, as far as that goes. Very quick slide. Red Hat's the leader in what it does. It has overtaken all of the other solutions out there. This is an important slide in that it, whether you believe Forrester or you're a fan of Forrester or any of the other, what's the word that I'm looking for? The reporting agencies, as far as that goes, that certify these things or put these things out there. Ansible has far and away eclipsed its competitors. But here's what makes Ansible really, really great. All right. Number one, as I said, it's not a proprietary language. It's more human readable. Hey, that's wonderful in and of itself. But let's say you're an organization, or you're talking to an organization, or you're presenting or selling to someone who's got an investment in something like Jenkins and something like Puppet and something like Chef. As Chris has always been fond of saying, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can leverage, Ansible can leverage the content and call to it that you already have. All right, so you don't have to wipe the slate clean and start from scratch. Okay, obviously I'm grossly oversimplifying that and how it's done, but do keep in mind that it is entirely possible, and we've worked in many scenarios and many solutions and many environments where people have done just that. Chris, you want to add anything to that one?
Actually, I'm going to kick back to you with a question, Jonathan. What is Gartner?
What is Gartner? Gartner, Forrester are agencies that basically take a look at solutions and vet them independently based on different sets of criteria. So, they will go ahead, just like you'll see here, and define, so who's a challenger, contender, a strong performer, or actually a leader based on their own, based on that independent criteria. So what they'll do is they'll talk to end users, developers, they'll talk to C-level executives as far as that goes. So, I've always said throughout my career that your mileage may vary and you can get as much out of something as you're able or willing to put into it. But when they go ahead and they do say that these people have it over the others, it's not paid for. It's not a paid for advertisement. It's based on some very stringent criteria, research, and end user participation.
Thank you. All right.
So
back to you, sir.
Yes. Any questions so far? I'm not watching I can't see the chat. So again, just feel free to raise a hand, shout something out, or whatever you'd like. So little graphic here, 68% of respondents indicated they still use command CLIs on individual devices. We do what we're comfortable with. You know, many years ago, when Windows came out, I knew people who would not point and click if it killed them. All right, they were going to do everything through DOS commands. So when we talk specifically today about networking, you know, why hasn't networking changed? Networking is kind of, you know, interesting in that regard. From the people side, you can see, you know, just everybody does what he or she has been used to doing and been successful with. So there are specific skill sets. It's usually delineated by the vendor that you're using. So the skill set, people will be subject matter experts in his or her individual thing, if you will, their own vendor experience. It gets siloed in organizations. I've already talked about this. And most importantly, just legacy operational practices. I think the thing that cripples us or hinders us is a better word in the IT industry is this is the way we've always done it. It works. I'm sure there's something else, but why change now? All right, and there's many reasons for that. From the product side, you know, the solutions or infrastructure-focused features. All right, there really isn't one thing out there that's the end-all, be-all for everything that we need. They have those CLI-based interfaces, also siloed technologies, and you know they're big, old, proprietary platforms. You either know it or you don't. And sometimes the biggest fear that we can have is when, you know, Joe or Jane, who's been here forever, you know, God forbid he or she wins the lottery, retires, you know, or gets hit by a bus because they do what they do. They've always done what they've done. And, you know, maybe no one's taken the time or opportunity you know, to learn those skills because they could be older skills and they just don't seem as, you know, as colorful as what other people do. So as for next generation networking, why that doesn't work, we're all going to have to automate to manage the diversity and the scope and the range of what's out there today. And as you can see from here, we don't need to go through them. These are the hot buzz phrases of what we're doing today: edge and hybrid, digital transformation. I've heard as many, if you ask 10 people what digital transformation means, I think you'll get 12 answers. And, you know, data intensive computing. So things are definitely changing. And the way this is the way we've always done it doesn't sit as well as it used to in conversation. Ansible Network Automation basically is the ability to take all of these different and disparate solutions, devices, and platforms and make them work together. A couple of things to note of here is what I mentioned to or alluded to before. It's certified content collections. So when we talk about modules, if I talk to you about Cisco modules, Red Hat didn't just come up with some modules to work with Cisco solutions, okay? Red Hat worked with Cisco, and as a matter of fact, Cisco created certified content to fit into the automation platform. So again, I'm just reiterating the fact that you're getting good, solid, deployable, ready to use, and again, most importantly, supported code. So, you know, modernizing and scaling network operations. On the left side, this is what we've done traditionally, as far as that goes. I love the artisanal networks that you know, at the bottom, but that's very true. If someone's been doing their way of networking their way for a very long period of time, then, you know, just like any other personality trait that you see in the world, that network solution is going to reflect, you know, who they are, what they know, and how they like to do things. But, you know, next gen, you know, is more of a community, dare I, you know, alluded to the open source culture. Instead of being afraid of risk, we're aware of it. Okay, instead of having proprietary solutions, we'd like to be a little bit more open. Open solutions allow us to get to that orchestration thing that I talked about a while back. You know, it used to be, what's the word that we, back in the day, and I've been doing this a while, if you had 5 different IT groups, you had 5 different CIOs, okay? And everyone was afraid that, they kept away from someone else because they felt that it was job security. Now we're all working together. We can't do that anymore. Businesses don't run that way. And then, of course, instead of paper practices and methods of operation or standard practices, we use infrastructure now as code. So as you can see, it's definitely changed. This is the way of things going forward. And it's going to change even further because the advent of containerization and moving to the cloud is very, very slow, and I shouldn't say slowly, but is rapidly becoming a way to go. We're getting more away from on-prem, and we need those flexible tools because a lot of these legacy solutions were not designed to do that. What does the Ansible automation platform do? Well, it automates your network with a single tool. I've already told you that it was started out as a config management tool. It's phenomenally useful in the DevOps scenario. As far as infrastructure and infrastructure awareness and/or network validation, it gives you the opportunity to perform those tasks in an efficient manner. So rather than you can set up your tasks, you can set up your playbooks and your routines to run, and then you can cull information or be notified of information in a proactive instead of a reactive basis. And again, this will all tie together as we get into the usage and especially look at the GUI that's involved. It's for all of this stuff. If you're doing virtual networking, physical networking, or software-defined networks, controllers, all right, all of these solutions. And you know what the funny thing is, or the good or the bad of it all, you might have more than one of these in your house now. A couple of them, if not, hopefully not all of them. But again, it's here to show you simply the flexibility of the Ansible automation platform solution. So how do you get started? Well, start small, think big. I built a career on thinking big, starting big, and got kicked in the you-know-what a lot of times for doing that. But that was just me. But again, config management, infrastructure awareness, and network validation. So those are 3 benefits, for successful networking operations and how to execute them. The Ansible network ecosystem works again on switches, routers, load balancers, controllers, etc. And you can see a listing of some of the more prevalent ones underneath. You want to deep dive on some use cases. So config management, start small, config backup and restore, infrastructure awareness, dynamic documentation, network validation, operational state validations. Where are we, at any given time? How's everything doing? Are we compliant? Are we monitoring? Do we have a tool that's monitoring for security threats? And do we have a way of actually pulling from those logs or looking for specific, or automating log management or making sure that things are, running smoothly on every area that security solution touches? What is the network automation journey? It goes from opportunistic, as far as Red Hat puts it, to institutionalized, but it starts small. Backup, restore, documentation, scope config management, then of course compliance, all the way to the point where you have operational state validation. I have playbooks whose sole job it is to go out there and automate log reading, looking for specific events, and actually even kicking off routines now that mitigate those events and let me know. And we've all seen this in some way, shape, or form. hey, here's a threat. This is what we did to remediate it. But, so you can go ahead and search for that and define that, all the way to automating all of your NetOps operations. Quick victories, things you might want to consider. This is just, yet another version of what we've been talking, or another thought on what we've been talking about, but you can see different places to start and what we're going to do. And you're going to touch on these, as a matter of fact, in the hands-on exercises, so I'm not going to spend, a lot of time here. The slides will be available. You can download them and, read them at your leisure. And then you get out to thinking big. So I believe that I've actually made it through the entire first section. I apologize, please, again, if that was too fast or too high level. It was intended to be, Chris and mine's goal is to get you pounding your keyboards and asking questions as a result of that. So let's go ahead, and I believe, actually, Chris, when do we have, and I'm sorry, this is...
There's a break for lab 1.
Yeah, a new slide deck, but we got to work, we're not there yet.
Yep.
So, any questions so far? Let me take a deep breath and a drink of water. So that's the solution. That's a high-level overview of what it does, and a very quick look at what you can actually do with it. If you're an experienced Ansible user or you're new to it, let's just review those basics. Okay. So first of all, the automation lifecycle. We have content creators. We have domain experts. Okay. We have the trusted level where our content domains exist. So these are all the infrastructures, either Linux or Windows, and perhaps we're running in a cloud, on-prem, off-prem, hybrid, our networking and our security. So these are the domains that we're looking at. We want to discover things. So we have the Automation Hub. All right, the Automation Hub, as I've said, if you're new, you'll be seeing that great for the first time. If you've come from another version, we're talking about Tower. And then you want to build out your Ansible content experience with your playbooks. This is an example of a playbook. This is a legitimate playbook. Looking at this playbook for a lot of years. And as I said before, this is written in YAML, that human readable language. And very quickly, all playbooks begin with the 3 dashes at the top. And if it looks like a list, it is, because it's supposed to be. So the 3 dashes at the top define the beginning of a playbook. And then as a best practice, it's a good idea to say, hey, when I'm writing this playbook, what does it do? Well, it installs and starts Apache. What does it run against? Well, we have a list of defined hosts. In this case, that list is called web. We'll talk more about inventories in a little while. What permissions do I need? Do I want to escalate these permissions? Do I want it to be able to run as an administrator? Yes. So I'm going to use the become, the become function. And then as you see underneath that, there are 3 tasks. We define the tasks, number with a colon, and then underneath, look at the list, look at the way things line up, look at the cadence, look at the indentation. That's all very important. So the name is the name of the task. Underneath the name of the task is the module. We'll talk about modules shortly that we're executing. And underneath the name of the module are the parameters of that module. So good time to talk about state at this point. When you are using so Ansible can determine the state of something. So when you're calling to something, it can have a present state, a started state, a stop state, and it also embraces you'll see in the exercises, the concept of item potency. So when you run a playbook and you execute those modules, okay, it'll tell you what worked, what didn't work, what was changed, what wasn't changed, if there were no changes, and naturally if anything failed. Let's say something failed and you went out and you made some corrections to it. If you were to run your playbook again, because the modules are stateful, it would not rerun every single module unless it detected a change. So that is the concept of idempotency. And you can see right here that everything, the tasks are executed sequentially. So it's I first do this, then that. And this is a very simple, very basic, but also a very real playbook. This actually will work and will run. Plays, modules, and playbooks. So a play is basically, what am I automating? All right, so breaking down what I've already told you, you can see, install and start the Apache engine. Okay, modules are tools in the toolkit, is how we describe them. All right, so in this case, we're using a module called template, whose arguments are source and destination. Okay, there are also something called Ansible Plugins. Plugins are, they're calling them extra bits, but the plugin pieces for, let's say, for a Cisco module would be the code so that would be the Cisco portion of the Cisco module. All right. When I say the Cisco portion, that comes from Cisco. When I invoke this module, how do I touch my Cisco endpoint? How do I touch that system? What do I do? That's what the plugins would be. All right, so it just extends that module infrastructure, if you will.
Yeah, Jonathan, real quick, if you don't mind,
Yes, sir.
if I add something.
No,
here.
go right ahead. I'm sorry, I should have taken a breath. Go right ahead, sir.
No, we have some filter plugins as well, and you're going to utilize one today. But if you look down at the bottom, it says to nice YAML and to nice JSON. What you're actually going to do today at some point is pull a running config from one of the devices we have, convert it to YAML. So it'll grab the running config and actually convert it into a playbook, which then can be used to run later on. So no longer do you need to manage backups, but you can actually manage a statefulness or a stateful set of devices, right? So no longer are there running configs. Now it's just, this is what the device should be. So if you ever have to replace the device, it goes down for whatever reason, you can just run the playbook on the device and you're back up and running. It's just something cool to call out, and you'll actually be running it today. Go ahead, Jonathan. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Nope, thank you, sir. Inventories. Inventories are is what your playbooks are going to act upon. Just basically they can be a list of IP addresses. They can be static. They can be dynamic. As you see here, they can be FQDNs instead of a list of IP addresses. As long as we know what web server 1 is, we can go ahead and call on it. And you can see that we have a grouping. We use groupings. We have web. We have a database server, and we can also go and do the same thing with our switches. Excuse me. So a couple of things about inventories. Like I said, they can be static. You can go ahead and say these are the IP addresses. Let's say I have 1,000 IP addresses, or maybe your organization is not that big. You've got 100 or 50 or 20. So Jonathan, do I have to go ahead and specify all 20 of those each and every time I create an inventory for a playbook? And the answer is no, you do not. If you have web servers, in the top example, if you had 20 web servers, you could actually do a list and say, I want you to do this on web servers 1 to 20. I want you to do it on web servers 1 to 5. You know, you can slice and dice your organization and your inventory any way that you like. But I just want you to see that you have the concept or the opportunity here to use groups and different ways, you know, and there's different ways to define them. Ansible also, we love roles. Okay, what is a role? Well, role's something that happens over and over again. It's a group of tasks that we, that we invoke repeatedly. So we can go ahead and create a role instead of having to specify all the information repeatedly in multiple playbooks. So you can group your tasks and variables. We'll talk about variables down the road into something like a role. So let's say I want to install and start Apache. My host, as you saw previously, is web, but I want to do those on common and web servers. All right, so that's my role that I use most often, so I can specify that. We also have collections, okay? And collections is a great reason to be part of the Ansible community. The great thing about Ansible is, or one of the great things about Ansible is the fact that you do have this community mindset. And if you're, regardless of whether you're new to the solution or you've been using the solution for a long time, if you have to do something that you've never done before, chances and confidence is really high that somebody's gone out there and done it. But I want some content that I can depend on. I want to be able to cull information from something to use in my environment that's not going to, you know, get me into trouble. And I said getting into trouble, I mean, you know, break something or worse. So Ansible has content, has collections where you can look at modules, where you can look at playbooks for functionalities, where roles have been defined, where plugins have been used, with all the document and all the testing. All right, so it's good, solid, certified content. And I should say, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, that content is that content is available to anyone with a valid subscription, correct? A paid for subscription?
The Ansible Hub collections, which are certified collections, are gated. So that means that you would need a Ansible subscription to be able to get access to those. However, we have an open source rendition called Galaxy, which is where me, Jonathan, anybody on the planet can essentially go and create their content for other people to utilize. Big vendors also utilize this, but it would be recommended if you're doing something in large production to look first at the certified collections for stability reasons.
Yep. So here's an example. Here's an example of a collection. Okay, so they're a playbook that says deploy nginx.yaml. That is a playbook, so it's going out there and it's showing you that has basically already been predefined. All right, so there's the content at top, there's the name, the description, hosts or inventory, it's going to run on everything, and then the listing of tasks, and you can see from there that it's specifying particular roles, okay, include, and vars, vars means variables. All right, so just an example of what a collection is. So you go out there, you download deploy-nginx.yaml. This is what you're going to get. 90+ certified platforms in all of these areas. This is pretty much a list of most everything, at least in the networking world, that you can run on, be it infrastructure, cloud, network, and security. So how's network automation different from other types of automation? Well, network automation compared to servers. Module codes executed locally on the control node, okay, and then that is pushed out to network devices and API endpoints, as Chris said earlier. Okay, if you're using Linux and Windows in a host, that module code is copied to the node that's being managed, executed, and then removed. So you can either execute things locally to have them pushed or remotely. This is an example of some network connection plugins. Use your vendor of choice, just like it says. If it's Arista, if it's Cisco, Juniper, or RHEL. So you have Chris, you mentioned this before, netconf, and as far as that goes, or network_CLI is a command line, just telling you, here's the connection, here's what it does, and here's what you're able to execute it against. And the link at the bottom will take you through the latest all of the plugins and connections that are available. This should have probably been back a little bit further, but this is what I was showing you, an example of a networkable inventory. So we have 6 routers here. we are defining routers 1 through 4 with specific IP addresses.
Yep,
Okay.
and also adding to this is what their inventory will look like. So the routers that you're using will have an IP address. That's what we're defining in the Ansible post. So just be aware that everyone's will be different. So make sure when you're going through the exercises today, you're aware of that.
Yeah, you'll have your own individual environments. Inventory, as you've already seen, can go into groups. So, you saw that previously when we did web and DB and routers. No difference here, Cisco, Arista, Juniper. And you can also nest groups together. So if I just wanted to do everything to all my routers, I could create a group of children routers, and then include all of those descriptions in there. All right, and just understanding inventory as far as variables do. There's two things that we have in Ansible that might look similar, but they are not. One is variables, and the other are facts. Okay, very simply, here they're showing you variables. Host variables apply to the host and override group variables. Variables are bits and pieces of information that we define as users. Facts are things that Ansible pulls directly from the system itself. Okay, so here we're showing that if we're using variables, we have defined these IP addresses. So when we go to the vars group, all right, they're just showing it. They're just showing us here that the group variables apply for all the devices in that group, but variables are things that we individually have defined. So an example of something like that in a playbook, we've already discussed. Playbooks are lists of plays. A play is a list of tasks. Tasks invoke modules, and a playbook can contain absolutely more than one play. So here is a routine. Here's a playbook to configure VLANs on the Cisco hosts. I just talked to you about gathering facts. By default, Ansible will gather facts at the start of every playbook. Here we're just telling it, nope, don't do that. And then the task is, looking out for VLANs using the using Cisco NXOS VLANs. And then, so that is the actual module itself, and then the arguments are listed underneath. And that is where I get to take a break and take a breath. So Chris, I'm going to go ahead. Have you already, looks to me like you've already taken my share away.
I have. Yes, sir. Let me go ahead and put this in the chat.
Nice. You could have at least let me give it back.
Can the Ansible, someone just asked a question. I apologize. Let's see. Can the Ansible Network OS dynamically assigned while running the playbook? I would need to know a little bit more about what we're asking there, but we can definitely pull information during the start of the play. So by default, gather facts runs in the beginning of the play and can gather information. However, you can run it, later on down the road if you need to, but it has to be at the start of the play, I believe. You're gonna create, Motaz, you're gonna create a network example, but absolutely we can go through some together a little bit later on down the road. Let me go ahead and assign out some student IDs. So you're gonna get a link in the chat here. Please make sure to go there. It will require you to fill out some information to get your student number as a heads up. So if you don't want to use your email address, that's fine. You can use a fake one, but understand when you come back here, you'll need to utilize that one to get your information again. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share out my screen. Jonathan, verify you can see it.
Yes, sir, I can.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I don't think I can see chat though. Yeah, I can. Awesome. All right, so this will sign out your information just like I have here. This will be your workbench information. We're going to start in this VS Code access. However, if you don't like VS Code, you're more than welcome to utilize the SSH access at the bottom. It's just a little bit more non-CLI friendly. So if you don't want to play in a CLI all day, VS Code can be helpful. Mine's already open up here because I followed this link. But also remember your exercises are going to be right here. So make sure to click them. It's going to open a tab. You're going to need a few tabs open to complete today's workshop successfully. So just be aware of that. I have seen problems with Microsoft Edge. This is a heads up as you're working through this. But then you're going to actually go through exercise 1. Like I said earlier, this is a lot of exercises. We're throwing a lot of information at you. Go through this on your own time. We may cut you off at like 10, 15 minutes. That's fine. Don't feel rushed. Go through it on your own time. You have this to go through until sometime tomorrow morning when this gets cut off. If you need a little bit more time, please do let us know. But by default, that is when our cutoff time is. But once you get in here, we're actually going to go through exercise 1. Where you're going to connect to VS Code. It's going to kind of tell you some information here. If you have problems with the exercises, go through them slow, make sure that you're reading them through. Oftentimes when we have problems, it's normally that we tried skipping through a bunch. I know because I had those problems myself. But once you get into your code server, it's going to look a little bit like this. You'll need to open a folder up. And I want you to be in the student. You can scroll down to Network Workshop and hit OK. Yes, sir. You having problems logging into yours?
It's Manoj. Yeah, I'm getting error message like this is password incorrect.
Are you using the password?
Which is on the student 13.
Yeah, your password should be right below it.
Yeah, I'm using that one. I'm just copy pasting that and it says incorrect password.
All right, let me give it a shot.
Oh, sorry. Never mind. It worked now.
Perfect. Awesome. Exploring the lab environment. You're gonna have a little bit of a guide here. The only thing that I really want to show you is that you're not going to already go through today is Ansible Navigator. If you're familiar with Ansible at all, you used to run items in what we called our Ansible Playbook. Well, things have kind of changed. We're on the Ansible automation platform too. And the way that things have been changed is we now use Ansible Navigator, which is definitely a little bit different than just running Ansible Playbook. We call it a text-based interface. And that is because essentially everything we can do in here, yay, it's wrapped okay, is in this interface that is interactive. So we can even go and look at some of our items, our config. We can open up our inventory, which we're going to do here. If you just type inventory in during this, it'll actually show you your default inventory or the active inventory that you have. Once you get in, you can then navigate using, of course, on the left-hand side below title, using 0 or 1, and you can continue to navigate using that feature. So this device will actually show me my password, my username, anything else that may have extra variables assigned to it. Where it's also important to call out is we use, through Ansible Navigator, we create something called an Ansible execution environment. And what that execution environment is it's a virtual or containerized Ansible runner or Ansible core. So it houses all that information in there so that it can be executed on its own as a stand-up. And the reason we do that is either one, so you can run it, on this device in a contained environment, and then we can have multiple images for different items. So it allows us to make sure things are configured okay versus using what we did in the past, which were virtual environments. These are now containerized. But it also allows us to scale out. Let's say you have a Kubernetes cluster. You can absolutely add that in as a container image. If you have an edge or remote node, you can actually use the container image or the Ansible environment up there, or the execution environment up there. So it allows us to break things apart and become a little bit more dynamic. But let's go look at that real quick. We can look at the images here. We're only going to have one. You're going to do this on your own exercise as well. But there it is right there. We can hit 0. We can actually get the image information. And what we can even do is open it up and modify it right here. So if I needed to change my platform, any URL versions, we can actually change that right here. Nothing I need, so I'll leave that. But let's say we needed to change a package or collection, we can actually do that in here to make sure that everything is good. So if we wanted to change like the Ansible controller version to 4.01, we could then do that. We needed to change the Cisco iOS version to 2.32, we could do that as well. That's all I have to show you. I'm going to let you get to your exercises. If you have problems on the way, please feel free to utilize the chat or speak up. As well, if you finish or are already done, feel free to drop a done in the chat. Hey, Sanjay. Okay, so if you use the web UI link, it's going to take you to your, of course, system. But if you go up to the top here, you'll see network exercises. This is where we get our network exercises. You're going to need more than one tab open to complete this. Did that help? See, so if you click network exercises, it should take you to this page. Yep. Let's see. I'm not able to see the link to use the lab.
Hey, hi.
Hello.
Hi, Chris. Actually, from where I can get this link, app2.demorehat.com, reddit.com. I have to type it or there is a link?
Yep, so here it is right here, the one that you need to get access to your system. It's e2b0.example.opentlc.com. Or if you're looking on my screen, you can type it out that way.
Yeah.
Once again, I promise nobody will bother you or call you from any of the information that you put to get access to this. It's just simply to make sure that we're not bumping into each other when utilizing student IDs. And as well, if you don't want to go through the exercises, no problem, not a big deal. These are available, but way beyond the end of today for you to complete.
So this lab is available till today only, correct?
You'll have it till tomorrow morning. Correct.
I got it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I got it. Thank you.
Perfect. on this inventory file, you are going to have to call it a few different times, so just be aware of this. Everyone's will be different. Okay, so be aware of that. So for example, my Ansible host for my control will be different than everybody else's. My routers are going to be different than everybody else's. So you will have to pull that information up. So just be aware of it when you see it, okay? Try not to go too fast, sorry.
Chris, I am in.
The host name in the inventory, is it going to be?
Say it again,
So-
sir?
Sorry, hi.
host-
Hi. The host name in the inventory, is it going to take higher precedence than the host name in the DNS?
Yeah, great question. So if we're looking at this, the Ansible 1, right? And then we're defining it an IP address. So we're saying, don't do DNS lookup on this. We're providing you the list here. Essentially, if you have this set up on your network, you may not need this Ansible host command. But the way that we're setting things up, we try to make sure that it's done. Right. So on this router 3, you'll see there's no DNS name, but we assigned it an IP address.
Got you. So
Yep.
if you want to be more specific, you have to use Ansible for the IP to name mapping.
You don't have to use it for name mapping. You can use your internal DNS. So for example, if my router 3 was routable on our DNS, or the DNS that this Ansible control node is utilized, we could absolutely just remove this out. We could take all these out and just have router 3 in there.
Yeah, but there are two IPs here, the private IP and the...
Correct. We need that for today's workshop, right? Because we don't, this router 3 isn't really routable to us. So we have to assign it an external IP address so that we can utilize it because it's built on AWS. And then we have a private IP that's in the internal network that we utilize. So because we don't have a DNS set up, we're using Ansible to define that DNS host for us, or that host name lookup for us.
Okay, now
These,
I have it. Yeah.
These are actually Ansible built-in variables, if that makes sense.
Now I have a makes sense. Now I have a question. Say if we have like a jump server with serial ports connected to several network elements. So I have to, like, for example, SSH to this jump server, then from there choose to open a COM session. How can I do that with Ansible?
Yeah, so Ansible, we call those either control nodes or execution environments. So the endpoint we have here would be like the control node. This is where everything essentially is executed, but we could have what's called a worker node at that endpoint, or execution worker, that runs on that point and then can access that environment. We already communicate to that worker or execution environment, so we know that it's there. So what we do is we use OSPF to actually decide where that item lives, and it's sent out. So that's not a problem at all. We do that quite a few times, but you would need an execution environment at that point to be able to execute on those remote items.
Okay, I have another question. Like, if I want to, like, there is a hypervisor called EVNG. Now, if I have a network that, like, I can establish a network, then I can access each one of these network elements using the, like, telnet with a specific port to access these. Like specific network. So, for example, it's going to be the same IP, like the IP of the host, but like port 10,000 telnet, port 10,002, 10,003, 4, 5 to access router 1, 2, 3, 4. So how can I be?
Yep, we can even set up in our inventory, we can set up what the Ansible Connect port is. So I think it is Ansible_port equals, and that'll actually tell us what host we're connecting to. So if they're the same IP address, but they're just a different port, not a problem. We can utilize that as well.
And you mentioned that we can SSH, but how about if we are limited to telnet? How can you specify that?
Ooh, I haven't had someone ask me for Telnet, but predominantly We can use whatever Python connection elements are there. So for SSH, we use Paramiko. And for HTTP API, we use the Python HTTP API. So I believe that there's a Telnet one. I would need to check. No one has ever asked me for Telnet, being 100% honest. But give me 1 second. I can definitely look that up. I would be in the 99% sure we can use Telnet because we're just using Python packages to do the connections.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, we do. We use Ansible Telnet modules. We have one. Yep, it's called Ansible Netcommon Telnet. I can get it for you too.
Thanks.
Hold on. So here's a good way, and you brought up a good point, is so how can I look for something, right? Documentation is always a great place. We have lots of stuff in here. And this will give us kind of use cases on how to use it. If it was required, it would have a flag in here that says required. And then if we scroll down below, we can actually see what it's utilizing. So there you go. This is a Cisco Telnet or Telnetting in via Cisco. And we can even, I believe there's port in here as well. There's your port right there. And this would just be essentially a module that you can utilize to connect with it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is the benefit, right? You get to ask all these questions. And if I don't know something, I'll tell you, I'll go look it up, which I just looked this up. I've never had someone ask me for Telnet before. So that's a really good question. So Igor, you asked, the gentleman asked about automating through DMZ environment. Is this solved via Bastion host or an execution environment? You can do whatever you'd like there. Predominantly, we would tell you execution environment. And what that is essentially is it's a container that comes up and spins up. We do require some ports for that. So if it's easier to do it via Bastion or reverse tunneling, whatever you'd like, we can absolutely do that. We even do something now, which is called Edge. And the way that the Edge works is the node looks for the shortest path to execute the Ansible workload. So it actually utilizes the nodes as a runner to talk to other nodes based on the shortest point. You have to enable that, of course. We just don't let any box run it. And a lot of these network boxes don't allow it. But if you have Python on that endpoint, it can be utilized as a node. But execution environments are what we recommend. But if you want to put an execution environment on a Bastion host, you can. So we're not quite on exercise 2. So I am going to hold you up. My only rule is I won't help you with something. I shouldn't say my only. My rule here is I won't help until we get to that point. Just as for sake of time, we're on a real big time crunch already today. But I will help you once we get there, which is where we're about to head to next. But if everyone's done with exercise 1, feel free to drop a done in the chat and we can get powered on for exercise number 2. Jonathan, I think it's almost your turn.
Yeah, sorry about that. Have to find the that mute button again. All right. Excuse me. Let me go and share something out here. Chris, can you see section 2, executing Ansible?
Sure can.
Okay, and I'm going to apologize up front, everyone. I've done the best I can to get rid of this frog in my throat, but it's a losing battle. All right. So in this particular section before the next exercise, we're going to look at something we've already done. Some of this I've discussed it already, but we'll just quickly go over it. play modules. Questions already coming up about EEs and running a playbook. So let's talk again about execution environments, components as they are needed for automation, and they're packaged in a cloud-native way. So the components can be kept together, in a way that most people are familiar with today, which is a standardized container. So that's what an execution environment is. It's a container that only, they are containers that only package the components that are needed for automation, and they're packaged, as I said, in a cloud-native way. So the value to something like this is that standardized cloud-native packages, that contain all the components for the automation. So that includes dependencies and the core Ansible version. They're based on and tested on RHEL universal base images. So an example of something like that would be the AWS EE containing the collection, the necessary AWS Python libraries, and the Ansible version has already been tested and worked. So we have a way to format and package and ship it that most people are familiar with. But I guess what we would look at next is how we actually build them. So basically, they're it's pretty simple to build. Ansible provides the tool execution environment builder, the CLI tool Ansible builder for these solutions, which knows how to bring the pieces together in basically the right way and create the execution environment. These can be published on Private Automation Hub or in any container registry. So excuse me. So it's just a way. It's clear and simple tooling to let the creator focus on what they're best at, which is the automation content itself. So another example of this would the creators take the checkpoint, checkpoint collection and dependencies and Ansible version and just run Ansible builder. They don't have to worry about any Docker files.
Yep, and I'll take real quick, Jonathan.
Sure, go right ahead.
So something to look at here is we talked about execution environments. They are a container image. They contain two things here to definitely look at, or the UBI, which stands for a universal base image, which is essentially a RHEL image. And it really is what it is. It's a Red Hat container image. The ones that we're using today are Red Hat 8.4 UBIs. The Ansible core, which is essentially the Ansible Runner, which runs the Ansible Playbook, or as you'll see, kind of like the Ansible Navigator, the collection. Anything required to execute our play, we could put it in our image, and then any of the dependencies that would need to be required. So if it's Python 3.7, Python 3.9, any additional Python packages, so on and so forth, of plugins, they would absolutely be the dependencies. But once that's all bundled up, it then runs in the background. We use Podman to run this. And then when you run the Ansible Navigator, it simply submits it to the UBI and then, the execution environment. And then that goes to whatever endpoint or inventory that you need to run it against. Back to you, Jonathan.
So how do you execute automation content? The question is when there are EEs in the background. So the Automation Content Navigator gives developers and creators basically a command line tool to execute the EEs on their development machine. So the Automation Content Navigator is a discrete Python application called Ansible Navigator. So that's what we're using now. And it's bundled with the Ansible Automation Platform. So the challenge here is containerized execution introduces new challenges for developing, testing, and deploying content destined for the automation controller. But it provides a more cohesive, consistent, predictable, top-level developer experience for content destined to be run on that we're going to run on the platform. So it also leverages the existing CLI knowledge that people have while introducing enhancements due to this containerized execution. So perhaps an example of this would be the creator wrote an IBM Cloud EE and wants to quickly test it. Ansible Navigator would be the tool for doing so. Chris, anything to add?
No, sir.
Cool. So again, just an example of Builder and Navigator, what that would look, what we just talked about or what I just mentioned would look like. Did you want to say, I'm sorry, Chris, did you want to say something here?
No, sir. Unless you want me to add any color there.
No, hey, any color you want. It's not all about, contrary to the memo, it's not all about me, right? So this is just another Ansible Playbook example. You've seen it already. I've already broken it down for you. I'm just going to review very quickly. The name parameter describes the play. The target device is using host parameter. It targets devices using whatever the host parameter is, and optionally disable gather facts. Remember, we talked about what facts are. Then again, here is the information on the modules. Modules and tasks definitely have a one-to-one correlation again. And in this example, the iOS config task is actually the module. So the module, by the way, we'll give you a list. We can throw up in the chat if you haven't already found it, or you can actually go to docs.ansible.com and get a list of all the modules that are available, roughly 3,600 of them, just for informational purposes. Most any network operation or configuration can be done with facts, command and config facts. Facts return structured data. Remember, I said the difference is variables are things that we define. Facts come directly from the system themselves. So some network vendors, for instance, Dell, choose only to support the three modules that only support three modules for their route and switch platform because it can be done just by using fax commands and config. Sometimes other network platforms have resource modules that configure a specific domain and/or activity for a particular device. So the iOS VLAN module will only configure VLANs, as an example, on a network device. So a playbook run is pretty much where it all starts. On the document here, or on the diagram here, you see the classic way a playbook run. So we basically start by executing the playbook and run it that we're showing here, and we're running it against two hosts. So the playbook is interpreted task by task, like I said, sequentially or in ordered execution. And in each task, a module does the actual work, as I mentioned before. Variables can be important here as well. Each task has a name, which is the name field from each task in the playbook being run. And this has the added advantage of understanding what is expected of each task. So, if you're new to this, if you've been using it, if you're looking for, that, again, back to that orchestration, it's very easy to see what the name of the task was. Has anything changed? Has it run? Has it been successful? Because you can catch all that in the play recap underneath. So clear and simple to follow execution pattern, easy to understand, even if you have a limited developer background. So a playbook to automate Windows environments, for instance, first by adding users to Active Directory, then ensuring policies and provisioning server nodes for these users to be used in development, is a good example. Of an automation that you can leverage. So using the Ansible Navigator command, Ansible Navigator is the newer command line utility that Chris was talking about that's used to run playbooks. It replaces the previously used command, which was Ansible-Playbook, It basically introduces a text-based user interface in order to navigate through different parts of a playbook, including different tasks run by the specific playbook. So how do you use by Playbook Hello Navigator, right? So the direct command line interface is used when the -M, which is mode option, is used to display the content in a standard output. So this would be a similar feel and experience that you would get when running the standard Ansible playbook in the previous versions. But the new user interface is more interactive. It makes it easier to navigate to specific tasks within your playbook. There's no more needing to scroll endlessly to find the results that you were looking for when you get with as you would get with a very large playbook previously. The whole thing would run. It breaks it down into nice usable chunks, if you will.
Jonathan, can I interrupt you, please? No?
Yeah, I think you're breaking up a little bit. Barely hear you, yeah.
Just a quick question. What actually happens behind the scene here when we run Ansible Navigator run?
So what happens is it converts the playbook into JSON format, hands it over to the execution environment to execute it. It then communicates predominantly, I wouldn't say predominantly, normally over SSH, and it'll carry the commands over in a JSON format that then get delivered in either Python at the endpoint.
So does it build a container to run this?
Yep.
Command?
Correct. So the Ansible Navigator, when you run a playbook, it handles that information and provides it to the execution environment. That execution environment bundles it up and then sends it to whatever endpoint. So all of that happens internally until it hits the execution environment, and then after that point, it then communicates with whatever is external.
Thank you.
Correct. Yep. And we can create however we want the execution environment. That's what Jonathan was talking about earlier. And we can use Ansible Builder to stage it as we need it. Previously, we were using what's called virtual environments, and things would get messy as dependencies were needed. Now we can configure and set up dependencies appropriately a single time and not have to worry or fight with them in the future.
Very good. So here's just a quick one-to-one mapping of some previous Ansible commands and what they look like in Navigator. And these are some Ansible Navigator subcommands that you might use when using the command utility. The CLI examples are what can be used directly within the terminal itself, and the colon commands are used when you are within the text-based user interface.
Would definitely recommend you go try it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fun journey. So as far as running a playbook, this is an example of what's going to be what's going to be happening. You run your playbook is up top, and the output is listed below. And when you go to display the output, you'll start to see here the name of the play, the task, all the information. And again, we've not talked about it, but green, things that in green are good. Yellow is where something has changed. If there were no changes, it would say 0. And of course, failed would be in red, but just some, so at least in this instance, the desired SNMP strings, let's say, weren't present, so the changes have been made. So jumping into exercise 2, you're going to execute your first network automation playbook, and you're going to use Ansible to update the configuration of some routers, and it says approximately 15 minutes.
Yep. To go through exercise 2, we've already had some people ask for help, so I'm not going to kind of drive through it. I'm going to go back and take a look at some of these requests. Let's see. Man, let's go look. You are student 4. So let me share out my screen. Perfect. So, student 4. Awesome. All right, so you should be under that network workshop. This is the playbook. Looks good. Be careful here, everybody. Make sure your stuff is in line. You'll have problems if these aren't appropriately in line. And then what you want to run is Ansible Navigator. Run playbook mode standard out. You can see that I tried running it up above. Let's see if we get any problems. Perfect. And that's what you should get. So that was good. Fantastic. Why don't you try running it and see if you have any problems? I mean, it's possible the directory you're in, you may want to double check that if you're running it from a different directory. But what you can also do is, I believe, right click it and hit open in integrated terminal. And it'll open in that current directory. Let's go look. There's another one, student 9. Ah, so student 9 definitely has had some Ansible work before. So we're no longer using Ansible Playbook. Now we want to use Ansible Navigator, but we can go look at it. Getting in there. Did you create the new file? Oh, there it is. Sorry, I'm blind. So let's do that same. Let's open an integrated terminal. All right, and then if we go to the exercises real quick. Sorry. We can copy this command. Run it. Perfect. And that looks good. You want to try that again? Jihu? Looks like it's working perfectly. We can ignore that for right now. Navigator's okay. No problem. I believe we can actually run that via Ansible Playbook as well. Oh, well, we could, but we don't have any of the additional modules installed. But yeah, today we are set up to use Ansible Navigator. We'll give everyone a few more moments to run through that. Feel free. It's relatively quick, but take your time. Don't let us rush you along. We'll get as far as we can today. And another one that I definitely tell you to try is we're doing standard out today. remove this mode. And what you'll get is an out that looks just kind of like this, but is really helpful when you're trying to actually troubleshoot. You can see running incomplete, and then you can actually use 0, navigate through it, and find out what happened. As well, we now create something which are called artifacts. And I would definitely tell you to take a look at these artifacts, because what they are essentially the log of what just ran. It's quite helpful when you're going back through your plays.
Sorry, can you repeat that again? What did you say about artifacts?
Yeah, so artifacts, after each time a playbook runs, you're actually going to get a playbook artifact. And what it is essentially the log of what just ran. Essentially, it's the JSON information of what just ran, but the log as well can be used when you're trying to understand who executed what, and what was actually changed. Correct. Ansible Navigator will now be replacing Ansible Playbook. You can still, I should say, it will be replacing. In our world, yes, essentially, it will be replacing Ansible Playbook, but that still will be a functional part and piece for quite some time. We still consider that the Ansible Runner, essentially. And that will hand off the information. So the core or inside the UVI is what's called Ansible Runner, and it does essentially what Ansible Playbook does for you. Navigator is essentially our way of executing that information to get it into the execution environment. So Ansible Playbook will be running and working for quite some time. Which version is, are you asking what version does Ansible Navigator replace the Ansible Playbook? Essentially, we call it Ansible Automation Platform 2 because it's kind of a different hierarchy. So there's still 2.11 Ansible Playbook, and it still exists, still is updated, still is maintained. The Navigator is essentially a way of having things a little bit more flexible and more approachable. So you don't even have to have your Ansible execution environment on your node or on your control node. You can put your execution environment in a Kubernetes cluster. If you have VMware Tanzu, you can put it there. If you have OpenShift, you can put it there. You're more than welcome to put it wherever you would like, and we can communicate and work with it. And when you get to what we call the Ansible control plane, this is where execution environments really, really shine, because you can create username and passwords, just bearer tokens can go across. You have a whole world that opens up to you with flexibility and custom.
Hi, Chris. I have a question regarding the idemo. My pronunciation is not the best. Idemopotence. If somebody changed, two questions here. When the device first added to Ansible, Ansible has to take a copy of the sharding, or
Say it again. I'm sorry. So
when a router or any device, any network device is being added to Ansible for the first time, Ansible has to have a database, has to have a copy of its sharding, or
no.
the config.
Nope. So we don't need any of that to run information against it. What we do is at the beginning of every play, we do what's called gathering facts. This isn't so much the case with Ansible and networking devices, but what that does is it goes out and grabs or interrogates the host to grab information. We call that term gathering facts, and we can actually discover how many VLANs, and you're going to see this a little bit later on down in today's exercises. But we can grab all that information dynamically And then what will happen is it's stored until the end of that playbook is finished. You can cache it to stay longer, but roughly, for the example, it stays until that playbook is finished. So we're no longer utilizing like a database or anything to house that information. It's simply executed when the playbook is ran. But if you don't want it to interrogate the host, you don't have to. You can say, no, don't touch my host. I'll provide you information if you need it. And we're more than capable to do that as well.
Like the idea behind the exercise too is like if I am trying to introduce a change, but this configuration is already, so Ansible
Correct.
will still log to the device and try to push those changes.
So all of our modules, I should say all of them, most of them are what we call idempotent. And what happens first is we check to see if our change is already existent. So for example, if I'm trying to say an ACL that provides port 80 is open, and I run a playbook to try and open port 80, if my playbook knows that it's already changed that to port 80 or that it's existent on the device, it will no longer change at port 80. So that means if you run a playbook 1 or 100 times, you still get the same result. And that's the big benefit here, is it essentially becomes a source of truth for you.
Now, what the user manual the config, then like Ansible, is it going to have a copy of the config? Like what if the user change a config in between?
It would be dependent on the change that they made, but it depends on how your playbook is set up. So for example, if you have a source of truth, so later on what you're going to do is you're actually going to pull like VLAN information, convert it to a playbook. So let's say a user changed it. It'd be the same as if the user tried adding those VLANs back in and then essentially adding the group of VLANs back in. So something would go, oh, this is already changed. I'm not touching it. But there are different states as well. So one could be running, one could be latest, and one could be absent. So you could make it, like for example, an ACL on a switch, you could make it so that it's the latest ACL, which would be whatever we're pushing up there. Or it could be absent, so which would mean to remove it if this ACL exists. Or it could just be present, and that means if it's already there, whatever we have will not be submitted to the firewall or ACL. So there's a lot of flexibility there in however you want that change to commit.
Okay. Final question with the commit. Should I add at the end of every playbook copy run start to commit the changes in the device? Or Ansible will add this automatically?
It depends on the device that you're running. So the modules, all the modules have different information.
Yeah, I understand. Like Fortinet. Yeah.
Say it again. So let's go look at one real quick.
But like if the device has two configurations and run. Yeah.
It would be dependent on which one you're changing. So most of the time you're changing the run, not the startup. Most of the times when you're running like ACLs, like iOS ACLs, you're changing the running config, not the startup config. But what you can do is then do the commit through Ansible as well. So if you look in here, you have a lot of options in which you can add and the state on what we're adding. So for example, this one is merging the two. So here's your states. But each module is different dependent on the type of switch we're interfacing with or the type of device we are interfacing with. So merged may not be available for like a Juniper device, but it may be available for like a Avaya and a Cisco iOS device. So just be aware that like these modules are pertinent to the technology that you're utilizing.
Thank you very much.
Yep, and here's your running config. Right, so we can decide what needs to happen during that running config options. Does that all make sense? Or did I completely miss that?
No. You like you have a big point that different devices with different iOSs interact differently, and there are two states in the device. Like there are two configs at the device. There is the running config and the startup config. Some of the devices, like
Correct.
for example, Fortinet, when you change, you change both. At least this is my experience in the Fortinet models that I'm dealing with. But for Cisco, when you change the run, then if you want to commit, you either do write or you have copy run start or
Correct.
at the
Correct.
end.
So with the Cisco devices, they may be different from the two. So you may have options to change running config or change startup config. And let's say it doesn't exist. Let's say the module doesn't have something that does, a commit. What you can actually do is do what's a raw command. So you're communicating with it outside of the module subsystem to execute a commit 100% of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility here.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jonathan, I think it's your turn again, buddy.
All right. Hey, can you hear me? Because
I can hear you.
had to switch headsets. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. I can hear you.
No. And you can see section 3 network facts.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. So let's talk in this one. This is pretty easy, pretty quick one about documentation, facts for devices, and the debug module. So first of all, this is, and this link will provide to you, but basically this is where you can go and see Ansible for network automation. This is all the documentation that's available to you, and I'll put that in the we'll put that in the chat, or we'll make sure those are actually, I believe, in the slides themselves. As a matter of fact, boom, there they are. This is where you can go and see what the module documentation is. And again, just what Chris, you've already pretty much just run through, in a great live example of it. But here's where you can go get all the information you need about the modules that you're considering using and how to execute them and what their parameters and arguments are and should be. Ansible Navigator gives you like one trigger access to all the modules that are available. We're going to look at a formal introduction to Navigator in the next exercise. We also have fact modules, which are unique per platform. So for instance, the Cisco iOS XE, you would use iOS_facts. For Juniper, you would use Juniper Junos, you'd use Junos_facts, and so forth, and so on. Fact modules return structured data of important device information, such as IP addresses, software version, interface names, etc. And remember, we said that facts, again, keeping in the mantra that facts are bits and pieces of information that are gathered and culled directly from your system itself. And with Ansible, you can retrieve, as I've said, or discover certain variables containing information about your systems or about Ansible itself. And variables related to those remote systems, again, are called facts. They're structured key data, key value pairs, etc., that we can know about our network devices.
I have a question, please.
Sure.
Are these modules customizable? Or these are built-in modules that I cannot change anything in them?
So we are a very open source company. And in saying that, all these are available to you to change. They're all Python, so you can go in there and change whatever you'd like. And as well, most of these are roles, so you can go in there and change whatever you'd like as well. And you can even create inside of the Cloud Red Hat, which is included in every Ansible subscription. We provide you a Ansible Hub where you can actually store your private either collection modules or plugins for you to keep for later on down the road.
Thank you.
Yeah. Back to you, Jonathan. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. Resource modules can convert network native configurations into structured data. So every time a new network resource module is created, the list of facts is extended. So for instance, these can be collected for all facts or done on a resource by resource way. For example, I only want to collect VLANs versus collecting all of those facts. So I don't have to grab everything, I can specify. And basically means that, you know, the value of your subscription is continually being added to as, you know, Red Hat delivers additional resource modules and releases them in the Automation Hub. And of course, displaying the output, we use the Debug Module used, as it sounds like most on this call would all be familiar with a print statement, and the variables are accessed or called to by using the quoted curly braces or the mustache brackets. Pick your description. There's two main methods to gather facts from network devices, using the catch-all facts modules or using the individual resource module. So the advantage of the first method of using the facts module is you can gather multiple resources in a single task. You also don't need to register the facts to a variable. The advantage of the second method is that if you only need to gather a specific resource, it's less YAML to write and simpler for readers to understand what specific resource is being gathered and where it is being stored. So for example, the specified registered variable name. Okay, so just showing you can use, you know, the use of facts. You can get it all, or you can be more specific as to what it is you're looking for. So it's a simple and common approach. Facts modules are identical across all network platforms in the certified Ansible network metadata collection, and the way you use them is also identical. So it's just easy, and if you have multiple devices within your environment. But basically back towards that orchestration, it allows subject matter experts on one network platform can now gather and use facts to use on their operational knowledge on other platforms. So if you have your, you know, a Cisco engineer versus, you know, can cooperate or collaborate with Juniper. You know, a VLAN is a VLAN, an ACL is an ACL, you know, and as network engineers, you can concentrate on the important values versus individual network vendor syntax. So again, a great way, another way that Ansible platform simplifies things by, you know, being a force multiplier that assists and not detracts from what we do or what you do, excuse me, as network administrators.
Hold real quick, Jonathan. We have a question in chat that says, is it possible to augment facts collected by a module? For example, disk space, which was not included in the default. So there are, we'll answer this kind of in two ways. There's additional ways to gather facts. And I would definitely tell you to look. Predominantly, you're using a filter list on the facts that we gather. So we can grab even more facts. But let's say it still doesn't encompass what you want. We then can create what's called custom facts, which can gather custom information on your device. It should be noted that they look and function different on a physical box versus a network or API connection. Perfect. And did someone have a question there? Sorry.
Nope, that was just me saying great.
All right, back to you, sir.
So there's two main methods to gather facts from devices, using the catch-all modules or using the individual module. So the advantage to using the first method, the facts module, is that you can gather multiple resources in a single task, and you don't need to register the facts as a variable. The advantage to the second one, I think did I not just go over this? The advantage is that if you only need to gather a specific resource, yeah, same thing. Sorry about that. Another thing that you can do is you can run a playbook with different levels of verbosity, and by using debugs, you can print out to a terminal window very quickly exactly what the key value pairs are that you want. And in this case, here we're just displaying off the iOS version and the serial number. So structured data is absolutely malleable. We're not going to cover creating this particular template in the workshop today, but creating dynamic documentation is a valid read-only Ansible playbook where you and your organization can get value out of Ansible right away. So in this particular example, we have 6 Cisco Nexus 9Ks, and we used Ansible Facts to generate a report. With 3 of the tasks and a Jinja 2 template, and we're going to cover Jinja in the next exercise, a network operator can basically look and see that the 4th 9K is a slightly different version number the other devices in his or her network. So this kind of dynamic documentation, essentially can be helpful to be more proactive in catching something, like this. As opposed to a human who might have a hard time just to notice as far as that goes. I mean, on a quick look. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we can provide a link. There's actually a GitHub demonstration available on the Network Automation GitHub organization for this one, and we will made a note. We'll all go ahead and include that when we're done. Question? All right. So let's go ahead and hit lab exercise 3, Ansible Facts. And Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, sir. Exercise 3 time. Looks like some of you have already done it. Not a problem if you have. Go ahead. You can say done. Allows us to keep some cadence.
Yeah.
Understand where everybody's at. But you're just going through exercise 3. Very easy. Just using documentation. You're going to go through Ansible Navigator yourself. And then look at some of the Cisco iOS facts. And that's it. I'll wait for you at the top of 4, unless I can be of any help. Quick. Oh, he's talking about right here. Yep. Good call out. It's supposed to say run gathered, not run resource. The exercises are available indefinitely. They'll be up for as long as you need them to be, but the labs will only be up until about tomorrow midday. So if you need to go back and reference some of this material, like this one's very cool. Because what we're actually doing is gathering the facts, and then we're converting that content to YAML, and then you're actually rerunning the playbook to submit the VLANs back to the host. It was very, very cool. And you can actually even open up and take a look at it a little bit further. So the debug module is an addition. Go ahead.
Exercise 3 is about.
Sorry, exercise 3. You are correct. I apologize. I'm ahead. Thank you for that. Apologize. This is about discovering Ansible facts. Very different. Ansible 4 is the cool one. That is a very good question, Igor. You get to know it, but honestly, looking at it, I don't have an easy way of saying, here's how to understand it. You will see other reference material, which will help you understand and break it apart. But essentially, it's the first item dot, the second item dot, and we can tell that based on the indentation. Mayan asks, what's the difference between the debug module and the standard out? So the standard out is actually this one right here. Are you talking about this standard out, or are you talking about the standard out inside of a playbook? Because this standard out is actually telling us to run this. Feel free to run it. The debug command is the one inside of a playbook and providing us information from inside of the playbook. Mode is just simply providing us information. So if we just ran this mode, we would get none of that green information. We would have nothing that says message, nothing that says message. Debug is what provides us that information that we're calling it. We can get that information without debug using a very verbose module, but debug helps us just troubleshoot just the piece that we're trying to. I cannot open the debug once running Ansible Navigator. Jeff, can you show me what's going on? Or student 8. Oh, okay, got it. So I think you're stuck in here. Is that right? If you are stuck inside this terminal, you can just use escape and it'll get you out. You'll see escape says back. Does that work for you? What step are you on? I'm sorry. Are you trying to get through this portion? Step 4? And how to open .debug. Got it. I apologize. This guy. All right. So all you do, very simple, is type Ansible. We can do it right from here, but let's just do it. Navigator. You're going to use your colon. You'll do doc, and then type debug, and then hit enter. give it a second. There it is. Then you can scroll through it. And when you're done, you can hit escape. Yeah, feel free to try. I will say this is a little bit funky. The wrapping doesn't work super well in VS Code. I will be completely honest. So that's likely what happened. It probably didn't wrap some of the text appropriately for you. Are you using Google Chrome, or are you using a different type of browser like Opera or Firefox? Chrome, okay. I have seen funky stuff with Edge, but that's the only one so far. Perfect, let's see. There you go, you got it. Manish, what student number are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I created facts.yml, and while executing it, it's giving me error.
Yeah, what student number? I can take a look at it with you,
20.
if you don't mind.
20.
20? Perfect. Get the password. I believe we're running that one. I need to open the folder. I'm sorry, I can barely hear whoever's speaking. Here's your facts.yml. We're going to right click it and do open an integrated terminal. See how it goes. Oh, I can tell you. This Cisco IS Stacks needs to be right under name.
Oh, okay.
We can save it. Looks okay. There's problems with this guy. There you go. There it goes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, Jonathan, I think most people are done here. If anybody would like a little bit more time, let me know. But if not, I want to try and we're a little bit more than halfway on time. And we do got a bunch of exercises to get through. I will be honest, it's unlikely we will get through all of them by the end of today. But absolutely, we will get through as many as we can. Jonathan?
Yeah, if you'll just release.
Yes, sir. Gotcha.
All right. So we're going to just briefly go over resource modules and states of merged and gathered. So essentially, within your network network automation modules, how do we interact with the different networks? So a command will run arbitrary commands, facts retrieve information, obviously, config as a generic catch-all, and resources, read and configure specific network resources. So I think in this case, we're going to look at just some partner-specific adds here. So namespace.collection command is for Cisco iOS, and where we find that. The namespace in the Eris.eos and in Junos, and again in Cisco's iOS XR. So this is where we would namespace collection facts, and we would define, that's the module name. These are the parameters. So just an example of how we would go ahead and do that. And in this example, we're going to use the network toolkit collection. So Ansible Automation Platform provides basically a turnkey multi-network backup role that you can simply call to. It's 8 lines of YAML, and you can cut and paste it, and it'll back up your network configurations for literally hundreds of network devices. That is, I apologize, that is the configuration to code right here. So let's go ahead, and in this one here, we're going to cover configuring VLANs on Eris.eos, building a playbook using the VLAN module for Eris.eos.
Jonathan, are you still there? Are you sharing?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I can't see your screen.
Yeah, sorry about that. I fat-fingered a button. Give me just a minute.
Yes, sir.
I realized I did that. I apologize if you heard the expletive that followed it.
You need to take a break, Brett. There it is. Oh, I guess it's my time. Apologize. Jonathan, are we at my portion? I apologize.
Yeah, we're up
It's my
to
turn.
yeah, exercise 4.
Sorry, everybody.
So that's all right. So we're just going to run through exercise 4.
Exercise 4. Here we go. So exercise 4, once again, I think I talked about it already. We're going to gather some information about VLAN and apply it. And we talked about this a little bit before, but there's actually 7 possible parameters for this module. And if you want to know more, we even have supplemental exercises for you to go to. Feel free to go through it. This is a really cool one. I talked about this nice to YAML already, which is very cool. And just let us know when you're done. If you're having any problems, please do let me know.
Chris, I got to step away for about 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
Yes, sir. And sorry, this is where the issue with the fact was. So make sure that you do on step 7 that you're not running resource, you're running gathered. Or apologize. Exercise 4, going through it. If you get through it already, feel free to let us know.
I'm back. Okay. Thanks for posting. Done. You're done. And again, apologize for all the rushing, but there's a lot to cover.
Take with this, Manish.
Sure.
I'm still having, issue in executing the resource at YML. Copy pasted exact same way. But
This one.
yeah,
All right, this one right here.
yeah,
No problem. What student are you?
20.
20. All right, let's take a look. Where's the line? Looks okay. Let's give it a shot. So that's the command we're running, correct?
Yeah.
This looks good. What directory are you in? Type PWD?
PWD, yeah.
Is that where you're at?
It's okay. Yeah, thank you. No problem.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Did you run the same command?
Oh, actually, right click on the code and just, run it from there.
Oh, you're doing this one? So
Yeah.
these...
Yeah, this way. I just did the same this way.
Let's see what that does. So that one works. You're using the top one, right? The Ansible Navigator run?
Yep.
I don't think.
See what mistake I'm doing.
Let's see. Oop, that. Yeah, you can still use the I for inventory in Ansible Navigator. But you can also use the Ansible config like you could previously. Yeah, so you can do Ansible Navigator -I on whatever the inventory file is. But when you do run, there is some changes to this. I'll be honest, I've never done the look at an Ansible Navigator before with an inventory. That's how the new item has to look. So you'll see that Ansible Navigator run, then our playbook. And then if we want to use another inventory, it has to be after the playbook. So all additional features that we want to pass, whether that be log level, log file, the mode that we want to use, it has to be after the run in the playbook. Hopefully that's helpful. John, so we've had quite a few, I think, are done with exercise 4.
It's go ahead.
Do we? Does anybody want some more time on exercise 4 before we move on? If so, please feel free to drop something in chat so you can provide me a little bit more time. I understand we're going through these relatively quick.
You know, we're getting into some more good stuff now, though.
Yep.
Unless you're like me and think it's all good stuff. So there.
There you go.
All right. So
we will continue.
Yep. So now we get continuing our journey. Let's start to talk a little bit about the automation controller, about what it is and its features. Previously referred to as Tower, the architecture of the platform consists of several core components. Those are shown on the right, which are used by the people on the left. So let's just go ahead and look a little closer at the different parts, what they're made of, and how they work with each other from the perspective of each of these. So it's basically it's a single on the glass view of your entire environment. It's where you'll enforce and define role-based access control. You'll deploy entire applications from here. It's where you'll look at your logs, and it's where, most importantly, we're going to go ahead and create workflows. So workflows are, Ansible allows you basically, or the controller basically allows you to create multi-playbook workflows that you can chain together with any number of playbooks, regardless of whether they use different inventories, they run as different users, you know, or run them all at once using different credentials. So the slide you're looking at now is just an overview of the value adds of controller, the automation controller itself. Very simple one, and what we're going to do now is just spend a few minutes just going in and poking around in that environment, and then we're going to start to talk about some of the different components that make up those environments, such as you know, templates, projects, credentials, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. You guys can move on to number 5. Exercise 5, excuse me. Take a few minutes to do that. And just like I say, let us know in the chat when you're done, if you need any more time.
Can you hear me, Jonathan?
Yes, sir, I can.
Perfect. Jeff, what number are you? Apologize. I'm not sure if I was talking on mute to myself there. But just understand that we're going to be going through exercise 5, where you're going to be going through the automation controller. The login is right back on your workbench information under the automation controller, and this will provide you access to Tower or the control plane, whatever you are used to calling it. Feel free, but we don't call it Tower. Just be aware of that. We call it the control plane. Student 8.
Can we call it the feature formerly known as Tower?
I think that's acceptable. I would have to say that yours is not right, Jeff. Yep. I would tell you to get a new student. You won't need any of the additional information, so you can start right on exercise 5. What you'll have to do, unfortunately, is either start one in incognito or delete the browser crash for just that area. I would recommend, for today's world, just try incognito if you're using Chrome, or you can just use an alternate browser altogether. You also see in here the execution environments, and you can take a look. These are what are available for you. Of course, you can always add more. Correct. You don't get to see the password. So let's open mine back up. After we store credentials, it's this one. After we store credentials, you'll see that the SSH private key here is encrypted. And there's no way for me to unencrypt the information. By default, we use AES 256-bit, and there's no way for us to get that information out of there. 100%. If you call Red Hat support, they will not help you pull that private key out. I can tell you that if you don't want to manage credentials inside of the Ansible automation platform, you don't have to. We work well with other items. So let's go back to credentials. And when I say other items, we work well with like HashiCorp or Terraform Vault. And you can even sync those up here, or GitHub personal access tokens. A lot of this information can actually be stored here so that all we're utilizing is a bearer token. Yep. So let me real quick, we can create one of these in practice for you. Right, my secret password will be called secret. You want to see it? What we'll do is we'll save it. You can see that my vault password here is encrypted. If I go back to edit it, I cannot see this encrypted password, other than I match the vault identifier to it. Now if I go back, I can't see that I'm my password at all. The only thing I can do, even as admin, is create a new one. But once I save it, I can no longer change that password. Like I said, if you don't want to use Ansible to manage credentials, we don't have to. We play well with others. Definitely do Terraform, HashiCorp. A lot of the items that manage credentials we can work with. And when they are confirmed or when we are utilizing them, predominantly most of them use what's called a bearer token. So the authentication never goes across the wire through Ansible. We use what's called a re-authentication or token to do that. Jonathan, I think it's back to you.
Hey, sorry about that. We're just going to move. We got a few short ones here. So let's talk in this section about templates, inventory credentials, and projects. So if we're going to talk about the anatomy of a job automation, we start off basically with an Ansible Playbook, and we create our first project. And a project or projects are just a logical collection of Ansible playbooks. Excuse me, I got a little far ahead of that. So from our project, we go off and then we go ahead and create credentials. And credentials are utilized by the automation controller for the authentication to various external resources. They can be people, places, and things. Think SSH access to remote machines or access to network devices as some other examples. We can even encrypt those, Chris, as you were saying, using tools like HashiCorp Vault or CyberArk. We then create inventories to store a collection of hosts and can group them in order to connect and manage them. And finally, we allow the automation controller to take all that information and run a job against the inventory host with the appropriate credentials in place. Job templates, very quick here, just basically everything in the controller revolves around the concept of a template, as we would think a template is a reusable collection of playbooks that we probably use repeatedly. A great example, I think, when I was talking about spinning up a VMware is one, or maybe doing, going through some network upgrades and checking version levels to make sure that everything is the way hunky-dory and the way it needs to be, or perhaps putting out updates. So a template requires a project that has playbooks and inventory, obviously, to run against, and credential services to get into devices. And they take us through this again. So just consider credentials can be plain text passwords, an SSH key. I believe, Chris, you mentioned a token or whatever the automated endpoint needs for authentication. The automation controller includes integrations with existing management tools, as we've already mentioned, i.e. CyberArk and or HashiCorp Vault. So if you want to expand a little bit more on job templates, the job template menu opens up a list of the templates that are currently available to us, and the default view is collapse that is, it's a compact view, and it shows the template name, the template type, the statuses of the jobs that ran using that template. But you can click and get an expanded view, obviously, and look at more information. The list is sorted alphabetically by name, and you can sort by other criteria too if you like, or you can search by various fields and attributes of the template. Major benefits of the automation controller is that push button deployment of those Ansible playbooks. So as you can see from here, the little rockets, you can easily configure a template within a controller to install all the parameters that you would normally pass on to the Ansible-Playbook command on the command line, not just the playbooks, but things like the inventory, credentials, extra variables, all the options and settings you can specify on the command line again. So easier deployments drive consistency, and by running your playbooks, the same way each time, they allow you to delegate responsibilities. Even users who aren't Ansible experts can run controller playbooks written by others, provided, of course, they have permission to do so. So just a couple of looks and views at what creating a template would look like. And, to choose the Ansible playbook that you want, a project has to be assigned to it. This menu is automatically populated with the names of the playbooks found in the project base path for that selected project. And let's cruise right into exercise number 6, where we will create an automation controller job template and show how we're good. The intent here is to demonstrate a backup or a network backup configuration job template with the automation controller. So Chris, take it away from me and back to you, sir.
I think I was talking to myself there. Jonathan, can you hear me now?
I can absolutely hear you now.
All righty. You may have to help reel me in. Exercise 6, we're going to create a job template. Just be aware, a job template, we use the word template quite a lot in this workshop, so just want to be aware. It's our way of applying attributes inside of the Ansible controller. So just make sure that you don't get lost in what we call a template. It's essentially a job template where we're going to apply attributes to our playbooks. And you can scroll down. This won't take you too terrible long. This is a pretty solid exercise that you will utilize in the future for sure. But just let us know when you're done. If we can be of any help along the way, let us know. How's everybody looking? Everybody done? That one's not too terribly difficult, and we don't have to navigate a CLI, which can be very helpful. Is everybody getting tired? Yeah, that IPv Sean, so Sean Kavanaugh is that GitHub up there. That is a relatively good resource that you provided there, Chintaka.
All right.
Anybody need some more time on exercise 6 before we move through? Does everyone need some more time on our break before we move through? How about that?
As quick as 10 minutes I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
Chris, I propose the next two sections are surveys and role-based access control, which I think you could shoot through just to go over, skip those exercises and go into workflows. Because I'll presume that it's created a workflow in Ansible Automation Platform.
Well, that's all of them, right? That's 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep. Is there any slide left? I think all your slide. You have like a little bit of slides, but predominantly they're through the.
I've got plenty of time. Any presentation always has plenty of slides.
Yeah, that one's pretty thick.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go through the Ansible Automation Platform essentially live, or do you want to go through some?
Do you
want to leave it to the audience?
I say let's leave it to the audience. So the next three, and the reason, ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about is we really like to get through to workflow. We still got a couple of creating surveys and things like that. You'll have all the information on that. Surveys, role-based access control, just, talking to this group, I think everyone understands the concept of, role permissions. It's just a visual on how to do them here. But workflows is usually the one we've always had a lot of requests for. And so maybe what we want to do is show you that live and then come back, because we've got just about under an hour to go. Oh, anybody want to go straight to a live demo of workflow? Is it okay if we just go through that methodology, experience telling us what people like as a whole, not you as individuals, just as a whole?
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it live then, Joe.
Yeah,
I think that makes the most sense.
Yep. All right.
So
cool.
we're just doing workflow, correct? That's all you're making me do today?
Yeah, you want me to? You want me? You've done enough already. Let's see. Do you want me to?
No, I'll do the workflows.
Run through anything on workflows? I mean, it's just okay. All right, real good. Well, then I'll shut up.
Fair enough. All right. So under the templates, there's two different variants, right? We have job template and workflow template. And a workflow template is something very unique to the Ansible Automation Platform. And what it is essentially our way of providing a flow chart with either approvals or other playbooks or job templates or workflow templates. Wow, right? Lots of stuff. And it is. And it's very awesome. This is probably one of the best tools here. So let's save it. And then after we save our workflow template, which all of you get to do today, we actually get to create a workflow. So I'm going to start with, let's do network system. That's a good one to start with. All right, lovely. We get one job template. All right, we know it's a job template just based on the JT that we have here. Then what we can do is string together another playbook with it. We can decide how we want this playbook to run, whether on success, on failure, or always. In this example, I'm actually going to do on success. And then we can choose what we'd like here. For example, we can make it do a sync. We can make it do a project sync before it runs this workflow. What we can even do is put an approval in place. And what will happen is someone actually has to come in and approve it. That approval can come through a few different forms and fashions, but essentially the way that we'll do it today, it's going to be approved to the user interface. And then what we can do is then span things out to either happen on failures or not on failures, right? Essentially on successes. Right. But what happens if we fail? Actually get items to fix themselves when they fail. We do the network report. What we can do is then hook these both together that we're all getting to the same result at the end of the day. This workflow could tie into multiple items, but what we have seen is people utilize like ServiceNow to integrate into an automated workflow, whether that be this user wants to open port 8080 to this server. The ServiceNow ticket would create an automation or come over and talk to the Ansible automation platform and communicate with the workflow to start it. An approval process would be in play to make sure that, yeah, no, I don't want that user open in port 80. Let's decline that. And then it could automatically send the user, this is not approved, close the ServiceNow ticket out, and be on with your day. You can let these pile up. For example, you could have like 5 waiting in here at the end of the day. You can even set them to expire. So for example, if the workflow ran for more than 12 hours and nobody did anything, simply just did nothing. Those are all options for you. We see people use this for creating new switches, for webhook, which if the switch comes up, moves somewhere else, and then communicates back with the Ansible automation platform to continue alternate playbooks. Let's save it and we can run it. So after this network system one loads, I don't even think I have the right credentials in here. Oops. It'll then go over to the approval workflow. We may have to move these around. What will happen then is you'll get a little bell up here, and it'll show you if any approvals are in here. Of course, you can approve it or deny it. If you don't have access, you just simply get to see it. If you were just able to kick it off and you don't have the ability to anything further, you'll just be able to see it until somebody comes in here and either approves it or denies it. And you can also see that there's a status here of never expires. More than welcome to choose if you want it to expire, whether that be 24 hours, 5 days, so on and so forth. Then you can hit approve and you can go back over to jobs and watch it run through. We can see our workflow here. Of course, it's designated as a workflow. Our approval was a success. And we can see the actor or the person who did the approval. And it allows a little bit of role-based access and allows to make sure that we have a little bit of CYA. The appropriate people can have the appropriate permissions to complete the access that they need. That's it. And then I think, is there anything else that we missed or need to tackle, Jonathan? Are we good to let them go through 7, 8, and 9? You're on mute there, sir.
Yeah, I know when the buttons on the keyboard don't work, right? Yeah, I think we're good to let them go through 7, 8, and 9, and we'll just be here to answer any questions they may or may not have.
Perfect. So now's kind of what we call your free time, or you're more than welcome to go through 7, 8, 9. If you want to go back and go through something instead of going through 7, 8, 9, you can. Predominantly what 7, 8, 9 are creating workflows. There's also supplemental exercises if you want to go through some of those as well. Really, it's your choice on where you'd like to go and what you'd like to do. We're here to help out or provide anything further that you may need. Oh, perfect. We're here until 3 o'clock, and I will let you guys stop hearing me talk unless you guys need anything further. So really those are separate items. but they can work with each other if that's what you're asking. Ansible Navigator can pass items to Ansible Vault, or sorry, the other way around. Ansible Vault can pass stuff to Ansible Navigator, and you absolutely can use Ansible Vault inside of Ansible Navigator. What I think you're asking, though, and I may be wrong here, is does the information held by Ansible Navigator get held in Ansible Vault? And the answer to that is specifically not really, or no, because a lot of the information that we want you to have to communicate with Ansible Navigator is not by default encrypted. For example, you can set up a username and password for your Ansible execution environment. And that may be in some playbook or some form that you have on the box. And they may not be inside of Ansible Vault. But by default, anything that we utilize that's encrypted for Ansible will indefinitely use Ansible Vault. So I hope that was as clear as mud. I apologize. Everyone, you just got this survey. I know that we definitely have some time together still. Just wanted to throw this out there. When you get a chance, if you wouldn't mind filling this out for us, let us know how we're doing, how we can do better on these. Regardless, you're more than welcome to be pretty blunt here. We want some honest feedback, so please do feel free. They help us and help your partner as well. Thank you. Let's see. What is the password for the net admin role for exercise 8? I believe you're just trying to get back in. This one. So this is going to, let's see. Okay, this is the same password you had for your login. So if we go here, you can log out, and you can use that net. I think it's net admin, one word. Network admin. And this will be that same password that you had here. Then you can log in. Yep, all the user access will essentially be the same as your admin that was provided on your workbench information. And thank you, Todd, for joining us today. Absolutely.
Oh. Sorry, how can I add a survey? Like step 3 in number.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go look at this. Sorry. You're on step 7 or exercise 7, right?
Yes.
All right. So when you're on your template, let's do this one. You see this survey over here?
Found it. Okay.
You can click that survey. You need to make sure that it's on and then add.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Once you've added one, you can continue to add more. The question I get here is, how many surveys can I have? And I have yet to see somebody find a limit. And I have seen some quite big ones. So I don't know. I think it goes. There's a network user template online. You don't have that job template? What student are you? If you don't mind me asking, 26. You are more than welcome to skip it if you don't want to do it. I'm just curious to see. Because I think, Jeff, you've already had a new student, right? Oh, let's think. Who are you logged in as? It looks like you do have a network user, but it's possible you may not. And you don't see this network user in there at all? Oh, okay. You're trying to add it in his workflow. Got it. All right. So add workflow templates. I think you're on 9. That's 8, right? Ah, there you go. Fantastic. But if we want to break something, these are the environments that you get to break. These are full-blown systems, full-blown supported Ansible automation platforms. So absolutely. Remember, if you've already completed this, you do have supplemental exercises that you're more than welcome to go through if you want to. You don't have to. You don't want to. Just trying to provide as much content as physically possible. I just wanted to remind everybody as we're starting to wind down at the end of the day here, we roughly have about 20 minutes, give or take. Is that, do remember that I know that whatever you're approaching with Ansible, it can seem very large. It's always good to take it into phases. So start with something small that's easily addressable, and then you'll slowly be able to implement it more and more. But in saying that, Benchmark has a wonderful services bench that can help assist and work with you with a lot of the integration that you're going to go through. So they are one of the best benches we've got. All right, go ahead. That's it. Just wanted to share that plug. If I can be of any help along the way, like I said, feel free to let me know.
هي رسالة الدرس في الآخر ولا إيه؟ هل دخلت في الآخر ولا؟ لا والله.
Excuse me. Hey, everybody. So time's about done here. I want to thank everyone for coming today and spending this time with us. I know it's a big chunk out of your day, and Chris and I greatly appreciate it. A couple of things just to finish up. One, please take some time and fill out the survey. It's extremely important to us. And again, we ask that you be very candid in your reviews. Our goal is always to improve these sessions. Making sure that the content is good, it's what you're wanting, and that your expectations were met so we can make it, so we can continue to deliver a quality solution for the time spent. The other thing is, if you have any questions following up from this, please get a hold of Malika or your sales rep at Benchmark. They have the opportunity to get a hold of us if they need anything, and certainly work with us to follow up on any questions that you have. Of course, if you need any help with discovery, with services, with any sales related or any related opportunities, when it comes to the Ansible automation platform, Benchmark is definitely your place to go for that. A couple of shameless pitches. If you're looking for any kinds of additional education, be aware of the fact that through Benchmark you can purchase Red Hat learning subscriptions. A learning subscription is basically, for the most part, an all-you-can-eat opportunity to take as many classes, instructor-led and virtual classes that are available through Red Hat. Some of the subscriptions even offer the opportunity to come with exams, certification exams, and certification exam retakes. I take advantage of it. Chris has taken advantage of it. Very well, money very well spent, and you can get those individually. Your company can also get them on a larger scale basis. That is pretty much all that I have. Again, appreciate you spending such a large amount of your time with us, and just might be a little bit early, but I wish everyone a happy, healthy, and safe holiday season. I know the last couple of years have been different, to say the least, but again, thank you for your time.
And thank you for your time, everybody. Absolutely.
Thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Chris, for running this wonderful technical workshop. I hope everyone learned from it. And as Jonathan mentioned, please reach out to Benchmark for any questions. And please take out time and fill out the survey as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Take care now. Bye now.